Welcome to the Gen Z show. I am your host, James McLamb. Today's guest is Mark McKinney. Mark McKinney is just a dad of a young athlete, just like so many of us are, but he made a realization in his journey as being a dad that he had become that sports dad. Do you know what that is? That sports parent is the one that is living vicariously through their young athlete, that is really so emotionally involved that they're ruining the experience for their young athlete, for their child. And so he wrote a book called The Drive Home about his journey of that realization that came on a drive home from a match that his son was participating in. Listen, this is a great book, and you're going to learn a lot during this thing. What you're going to realize during this podcast is you're going to see yourself in some of the situations that he talks about. And he gives practical advice for parents on how to support their young athlete, and also some advice to the young athlete on how they can enjoy their journey even better. I love this conversation. It really spoke to me. It really convicted me in a lot of ways. And I know that you're going to enjoy this as well. So let's jump right into our interview today with Mr. Mark McKinney. Mark, welcome to our show today. Thank you for being our guest today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I am excited to be here. So, of all the people I could spend time with, you're the one I want to be with right now. So, how about that?
Well, that's very kind of you. That's very kind of you to say that. And once again, we need to do a shout out to our mutual friend, Tammy Matheny, who I'm sure my audience is really getting tired of hearing me say this because it seems like every other podcast is directly related to the fact of a referral for her. But thank you again, Tammy, for a connection.
Absolutely, she's the new Kevin Bacon, as I say. So, 6 degrees of separation to Tammy versus 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon, right? So,
We should start a Facebook group and title it that and
we
see
really
what
should.
happens.
I'm
That would be
writing it down.
funny. That actually would kind of be funny. Uh, That's just not a bad idea. Well, our audience has just heard me give them a little introduction of what our podcast is about, but they always love to hear from our guests, share their story with them. So, if you wouldn't mind, take a few minutes and introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah. So, again, happy to be here. So, my name is Mark McKinney. Reside in the upstate of South Carolina. Grew up in a teeny tiny town in South Carolina here called McCormick. Which, if anybody's familiar, you either got a speeding ticket there, or you've played golf there, or you've shot something that was breathing in the form of an animal. But went to school at Clemson, so engineer by degree. Kind of came out into the world doing consulting work and have worked in the software industry for quite a while. Been married for 27 years, a number I should get right. And I have a 23-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son, and trying to raise those kids to be responsible adults. And have always had a passion, sort of, to our conversation today for anything sports related. I was sort of a high school athlete, played basketball, football, golf to a degree, but never to any great acclaim. Never sort of sniffed or any danger of me playing past the high school level. I was lucky enough to go to a small enough school that I was able to get playing time, right. So never to any acclaim, but of the last 10 years or so, have really enjoyed just anything to do with youth sports. My son has always been athletic and into athletics, so everything from baseball, basketball, football, and most recently kind of settling on golf when he got into eighth grade, ninth grade type of thing, which has led us to this conversation today, and sort of how my wife and I began to sort of see ourselves as kind of that youth sports parent. And there's all you can go read and Google all the sort of horror stories out there about us, right? About anybody that's the parent of an athlete. But again, yeah, exactly. So that led us to we wrote a book at the end of 2022 about our experiences as the parents of a youth athlete, and we did it through our lens as golf parents. And it's really a book that's all about this. It's about pointing fingers at this guy and about our relationships and kind of how fanatical I got at
Hmm.
times, and also seeing kind of the other golf dads or golf moms out there, sports dads and moms out there. So yeah, so it was a one of those experiences you go through and you kind of start writing all the stories down, and you recognize kind of where as a parent you failed, and where you got it right. And I think, a lot of times we fail more than we get it right as parents, but that's, they don't give us an instruction manual out of
No,
out of the gate, right?
no, they certainly don't. Well, when you and I talked to begin with, you shared with me, and it really got me inspired, and also some deep reflection too on my own experiences as a sports dad. Our oldest two children are almost the same age. I have a
Hmm.
22-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. So,
Yeah.
and then I have a 13-year-old daughter. So I have a big gap there, and they were very involved in sports. So I was that same. So the drive home is the name of the book. What was the story behind it? What caused you to write this book? That there's always a great story with authors of how they, especially a book of passion, a book that
Yeah.
that is your story. So tell our audience a little bit about what caused this book to be on your heart.
Yeah. So, and my wife gets full credit for the really the story and for the name of the book. But again, we had dawdled along as sports parents for a while, and I'd always been that guy, and I didn't recognize it until this process. But looking back, I was that guy to a degree, and there's a continuum of crazy, if you will, from on the sports parents, sort of from being completely sane all the way up to just being this fanatic, and I was somewhere on that continuum. So never the guy to run on a basketball court or anything like that, but always that I was just always so passionate.
Hmm.
Um, but as my son got into playing more competitive golf, started, high school, got on the high school team at seventh grade and eighth grade, and when he was in ninth grade, this is kind of how it all started. We were playing in an event in South Carolina, one of the SCJGA, South Carolina Junior Golf Association major championships, 2-day tournament, and a really hard golf course, and went into it not expecting a whole lot. But my son played really well day one, and which put him in the final group for day two. And when we got into the final group day two, it was a threesome. It was us, and there was two other young men. One who had already committed to play college golf, and the other who was just making his decision on where to play college golf. So as a dad, I immediately had this moment where I said, "Wow, my son's a freshman, right? And he's playing in this final group with two seniors. They're going to play college golf. Like, we've arrived." And then I started thinking through, like, hey, if we win this thing, the doors, quote unquote, that'll be open, like the exemptions that he'll get, the points he'll get. And I said, if he makes top three, if he makes top five, if he makes top 10, whatever, right? I had all these things, these attachments that I placed onto this round of golf. Not him, but I did it, through
Hmm.
through as a dad. And it became pretty obvious right out of the gate. So opening tee shot, let me know, right? Hey, a lot of those things were not going to happen that day, because every out of bounds stake that we did not find on day one, we found on day two. Like, if you could hit it out of bounds, we did. And the round, the more we got into the round, the more he struggled. And it was just, you could tell it was just that day. Let's hope we finish without anybody getting hurt, right? It was, please let this thing get over. And I found myself throughout the round, and I still struggle with how to describe the emotion I felt. Whether it wasn't anger at him, I don't know if it was disappointment that I saw the things that he was going to get going away, or if it was that feeling of I can't go help him. But I found myself getting more and more quiet as the round went on, and then by the time we got to sort of into the back nine, my wife and I couldn't even speak to her right. I was just angry at everything and angry at nothing all at the same time. And so my wife and I did the parent separation, right? So we stayed on opposite sides of the golf course from each other. And by the time we finished, I was fit to be tied, and I was ready to get the heck out of there. I was ready to go home. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Just let's just get it over with. And of course, my wife had booked us a lunch at Cracker Barrel, with a couple of friends, and so we had to go eat lunch, right? And I remember the only words I spoke while we were at Cracker Barrel were grilled chicken tenders, collard greens, and corn, and that's all I said, and water. And so I sat at the table all puffed up, and we got lunch over with, and we got back in the car, and And for us, when we got on Interstate 85, heading north, going back to our house, and I'm driving like I'm qualifying, like I'm Mario Andretti or whoever, right? Dale Earnhardt, right? I'm taking curves and I'm zooming in and out of traffic, and my wife's got this knack and this talent for if there's ever a tense situation, she can diffuse it almost like popping a balloon. And so so it's my wife and I in the front seat, our kids are in the back, and my son doesn't know what to say. He's disappointed in his round. And my wife said, "Kids, I want you to remember that this is the day that your dad on our drive home was driving 95 on Interstate 85. And all the rest of us were just doing is praying and hoping that we made it home safely." Right. And I looked at her and I said, "Hey, am I really that guy?" And she said, "You're that guy." And it just washed over me. I was so disappointed in myself that I could be considered that guy. I can be considered that dad. And kind of from that moment on, I started to sort of be more aware of my surroundings as we went to sports events, as we went to golf tournaments, and I started noticing myself walking the fairways. I started noticing when I stopped at greens to talk to other dads that they were either putting their kid down or they were talking about this should be happening, that should be happening. I'm like, wow, it's kind of like an alcoholic, right? And I got addiction in my family, and it's that when you have that realization, like, oh wow, you can't really solve the problem until you know you got the problem. And so anyway, I said, hey, I'm one of those golf dads out there, and I just stumbled across a dad one day, and he started describing all these different golf dads to me. There's the dad who played semi-pro, one day, and he knows all the answers. There's the dad who all he wants to do is go to the bar and hang out till the round's over. There's the dad who says, "Hey, we're going to sell the clubs if you miss this putt," kind of thing. And I could start seeing all those things come true. And so my wife and I, sort of months go on after that, and we had a conversation, and she said, it would really be powerful if we wrote all this down, right? All the mistakes we made going through this process. If we could write this down as a cautionary tale to say, like, hey, don't do a lot of the things we did. And to help people recognize, like, this is the kid's journey. This is their journey. It's not our
Hmm.
journey. Don't live vicariously, through them. And it was that moment of realization that we said, one, we're going to do it by poking fun at ourselves to a degree, but really being honest about it. And then two, soliciting advice from a lot of folks out there who have kind of been there, done that, coaches and mental coaches and businessmen and so on and so forth. So that's the long answer to a short question. But the drive home came from the fact that the catalyst for it was Britt, my wife, said, this is the drive home where Dad's going 95 on 85. So, and from there it was born.
Well, you mentioned that guy, and then you listed some of the things that someone had described of a golf dad, and I immediately was thinking of funny videos that you have found on social media occasionally, where a guy will kind of act out all the different phases of a parent can be over sports. But
Yeah,
what are you seeing in parents? Because immediately I thought of myself in two situations. One where I was that guy, one where I observed that guy. One was when my
yeah,
son was an eighth grader, and he was at a private school and very talented in baseball, and had made their varsity team. The only
hmm,
person I think younger than 10th grade that had made the varsity team. Not only made it, he was starting.
yeah,
And so the coach said, "Hey, would you like to be the assistant coach?" Well, of course, I wanted to jump in on that one.
yeah,
So we were playing. I don't even remember if we won or lost or anything on the game, but I was coaching first, and he had gotten on. I don't remember how he got on. Doesn't make a difference. But he was really fast, and twice when he got on, he got picked off or
hmm,
thrown out because he was not paying attention. And the second time, I was so furious when I came back, I just unleashed it. And the coach pulled me aside and said, "Don't you forget, I'm the head coach, and it's your
yeah,
job just to
yeah,
do what you're." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I just got, and which was a
yeah,
big ego thing to me, and I just had to back off. And this other time I was thinking about, because then I was living vicariously through him. How
yeah.
where I got to think about, I wouldn't have been that rude with one of the other students, one
Correct.
of the other
Yes.
players,
Yep.
but
Yep.
with him I expected more.
Yep.
And then I saw, my daughter was an All-American high school swimmer, and we were at a swim meet one time. And if you ever been to swim meets, there are just lots of sitting,
Hmm.
and looking and doing nothing and for like 2 minutes at the most of it,
Yeah.
invest in your kids. So, but this other dad's daughter, it was her first swim meet, year
Hmm.
round competitive swim meet that she had been there. And she was really young. It was very new to her. And he was just mad. And she couldn't have been more than like 10 or 11.
Uh-huh.
He was just furious over the fact that she wasn't doing well. And I kept thinking, are you expecting her to like com, you know, compete for the Junior Olympics tomorrow?
Yeah.
And the mom was like, it's just her first time. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, what problems do you see? What are some of these things? Because I want our audience to hear so they can see themselves in this. So, what are some of those dads or moms, for that matter?
Yeah. And I think so. You hit on a couple right there out of the gate. I think that probably the thing that sums it up the most is that across the group, a lot of times that we expect our kids to react and behave with the set of skills and experience that we have. And I think Dabo Swinney says it best. He says when he talks to his players, he's like, hey, have you been 24, 25 yet? And they're like, no, sir. He's like, well, I have. Right. And he's like, hey, have you been 30? And they're like, no. He's like, well, I have. As he's trying to convey advice and he's trying to say, like, here's how to handle situations and stuff. And I think that's one of the things I noticed most is, particularly when my son was older, standing around with some dads and maybe it's a par five where you absolutely shouldn't go for it in two, right? And he pulls out the lumber and we're getting ready to go for it in two. And the other dads and I are like, hey, we know that's not the right play, right? Because we're 40 years old, 50, we've seen it play out over and over and over again, but he hasn't. So I think it's that age gap and that
Mm-hmm.
experience gap where we try to project and say, hey, they should know everything we know at this stage in life, and they don't, and we didn't. I didn't when I was 18 years old. I didn't know when I was 16 years old, kind of thing. um, so I think it's that's one of the bigger things. I think the desire to save kids or young athletes or whatever from any sort of trouble, like as a parent, like that's our natural instinct, right? If you see your kid running in the streets, you go grab them and pull them back. If you see your kid jumping off a building or something, you go grab them and pull them back. um, and I think what's so interesting about sports is we have to go counter to that, and we have to say just go let it happen. Like if it's happening on a baseball field, one of the most stressful things in life is to watch your kid pitch, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're on the mound, they're on an island, golf course, wherever. But what the most effective thing to do for our kids is just to let it happen, let adversity happen, let them fail, because it's such this microcosm for life, right? And I think that's one of the things we see the most as sports parents in general is that we want to stop our kids from failing. We want to do and go and rescue. So whether it's a lawnmower parent or whether it's a helicopter parent or whether it's whatever, um, from the sidelines or from outside the ropes or whatever sport it is, the sport doesn't matter. It's the fact that we want to sort of press pause and step in and go and say, hey son or hey daughter, in this situation, make this decision because this is how it's going to go. When in reality, I mean, life is just doling out these lessons, right? If we would just get out of
Mm-hmm.
the way as parents, and that's what my wife and I have grown up. I'd say a ton in the last 18 months to the point that my son's playing his senior season now. In the two tournaments we've had so far and a couple of golf matches, she and I, it's like we're on the beach somewhere. We're so relaxed because we know, like, we used to live and die by every
Mm-hmm.
tee shot. We used to live and die when he played baseball by every pitch. We used to live and die by if he's running point guard and they're full court trapping or full court pressing or whatever. We're living and dying by does he get it down the court kind of thing. And going through this process, we had this realization like it's going to be okay. Like if he succeeds, he succeeds. If he fails, he fails. He's learning something. And I've done a ton of reading, and through this process as well. But so that, again, long answer, short question. But I think just to kind of in general, it's that one is we expect our kids to know everything we know and have to have that level of experience. And two is that we as parents, I think, are trying to eliminate those obstacles to help our kids be successful. And then the third, I think, is that for whatever reason, and vicariously, I think is a great word to use, but A lot of times we think their success is our success, right? So if little Johnny pitches a no hitter and we get to go to the water cooler the next day and say, hey, my son pitched a no hitter, or if my son goes shoot 66 or 67 or something like that, I get to say, hey, my son shot 60, but that's not it. So I think us as parents trying to claim their victories is an issue we see a ton. And as I say those things, I've been guilty of absolutely every one of those things. And again, that continuum of crazy. We've seen kids and dads cussing at each other, yell at each other,
Hmm.
throwing stuff at each other, and then they have to get in the car and ride home. And I think as an aside to that, is part of the research that we had done is there's a gentleman named Bruce Brown at Proactive Coaching LLC. You can go check him out. But they did a study, a 12-year study, thousands and thousands of athletes, and they asked them, two questions. They said, "Hey, what was it was college age kids. They said, what was the best part about your youth athletic experience, and what was the worst part?" And almost to a person, the kids said that the worst part about it was the car ride home with their parents. No matter what the sport was, it was the car ride home, because it was, dad saying you shoulda, you coulda, mom saying you shoulda, you coulda, whatever. And the answer to the question of what was the best part about your youth athletic experience is when parents said, "I love to watch you play."
Mm.
Um, you talk about a sobering moment, and I had the chance to touch base and chat with Bruce about that, and so that's what we try to do now for our son and for his teammates as well. Be like, just knuckle bump, like, man, I love watching you play. Whether
Well,
you Yeah.
well, I was going to ask when I'm thinking about this. My first thought is that what is some of the implications or the you know how's it affecting the young athlete through this
um
process? When you're near resources, I mean, what? Obviously, we know that as parents, we're acting like jerks.
yeah,
We're doing this stuff, and
yeah,
a lot of them might say, "Hey, that's reflection on me and stuff." But let's turn it around and say, What is it doing to this young athlete?
yeah. uh, I think, and again, done a lot of reading, and Tammy shared a lot of resources on this as well, so another shout out for her. But I think in general, so Matt Krug, he's a sports psychologist for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's got this interesting concept about attachment and attachments. So, and not my expertise, but his. But he talks a lot about what attachments we're assigning to a particular sport. So it may be we say, our kids playing this, and we continually say, like, "Hey, keep doing this, man, you're gonna get a scholarship," or to our daughter, "Keep doing this, you're gonna get a scholarship." And so I think that as if we cross that line and we start sort of making that experience sort of a negative thing for them, I think kids, they see the risk of, hey, it's not just me having a bad game. Like, I let my dad down, or I let my mom down, right? Because they've got this whole plan for me, right? Because we're looking at scholarships and so on and so forth. And I think it puts a lot of undue pressure. I've done the same thing, right? It puts undue pressure on them because they recognize, like, man, if I don't play well, then I feel like that I've failed them. So I think it's that it changes the experience. Like, the experience is supposed to be fun. Like, that's what I
Hmm.
remember from I can remember a few high school basketball games or a few ball games and stuff like that. But what I remember most is, man, just laughing on the court, or laughing on the field, or laughing on the golf course. I never did think about, God, I shot 36 here, I shot 39 here, or 45 here, I scored 10 points or 2 points. That's what I remember. And I think that's what we risk doing, is taking all that away from our kids when we almost make it a job, right? Versus letting it be sort of that enjoyable experience. And Jean Sutherland's she's the associate women's golf coach at Nebraska now, and I think she says it best, if I can remember it correctly, from the book. Is She said that her parents never treated her like her score, because she played golf coming up, and she said, if I played poorly, they were disappointed for me, not in me, and if I played
Mm.
well,
Mm.
if I played well, they were happy for me, not with me. And that, of all, I think, of all the research we did, of all the things, of all the people we interviewed, when Coach Sutherland told me that I was never a number to my parents. I thought back to myself, and it just washed over him. Like, how many times, like, have I been the happiest dad ever if my son walks off the green and he's shot under par? And how many times have I had that Cracker Barrel moment if he's played poorly? And what I'm conveying to him, to your question, what I'm conveying to him in that moment is, your worth, your value to me is higher if you play like this, and your value is lower if you play like this kind of thing. And I think that's the risk. And,
Mm.
and I've had that frank conversation with my son. I'm like, hey, I love you no matter what. I'm gonna hug you coming off the green no matter what. And let this be your experience. But if I think if I hadn't put myself in check, I ran the risk of him seeing that kind of that, like, that separation, right? I need to please my dad. So again, probably said a lot there and said nothing at the same time. But yeah.
So how would you advise? So I'm thinking our audience is listening to this, and there's some parents here, and they are probably feeling like I am, very convicted
Yeah.
on what's going on in their life. So how would you advise them to be effectively supporting their parent? I mean, supporting their athlete. How could they be the best support for that young athlete?
Yeah. So I'll answer it in a couple of ways. One is not a shameless plug for our book, but a shameless plug for our book. Not for the
It's
reason, not
okay.
no, but not for the reason of go by what and listen to what Mark McKinney says, because it's again, all I am, hopefully in the background here, I'm a Clemson guy, and so that'll, half the country will like that, the other half will think we're crazy. But what we did on purpose is we went and solicited advice from roughly 40 people and said, we asked them a couple of questions. What advice do you have for parents of a junior athlete? And what advice do you have for junior athletes themselves? And so that advice ranges from Dabo Swinney, again, Clemson plug, to mention Matt Krug earlier, Tammy Matheny's in there. We got professional athletes. We got Heisman finalists. We've got high school coaches. We got college coaches. We've got parents of PGA Tour players. So we got a professional rodeo guy in there, right? So it's this collection of sort of sports agnostic advice on how do you best support your athlete as a parent. And you'll see these themes start to emerge in there. But again, high level, I'd say one is just recognize the fact that it's their journey, and it's not our journey. Um, Secondly, is to have a conversation. And Tammy shared this with me, and I didn't get it until the end of my son's junior year. So completely powerful. But she says, talk to your kids who are athletes and ask the question, hey, how should I support you before an event? How should I support you during an event? And how should I support you after an event? And have the kid either write it down, have them tell it to you, have them text it to you, have them whatever method, your kid, you Snapchat for the folks that are on Snapchat kind of thing. But that single conversation was extremely powerful, because I thought this whole time, like during a golf match or during I was supposed to be like, hey man, do you need some water? Do you need some snacks? Do you need some whatever? Do you need me to be on the range with you before? I thought all these things. But my son was like, hey, here's what I want you to do. What I want you to do is, before the round, I want you to come talk to me about anything at all about golf. Um, anything besides golf as we're on the driving range. I don't want to, I don't care. Just talk. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about whatever while I warm up. That's what I need from you, before the round. And he said during the round, hey, all I want you to do is just, give me thumbs up. Just let me know, like, that you're still with me and you support me no matter what. He said, I need to see your face. And then he said afterwards, hey, let's talk about it. Let some time pass. But he said, I'd love to know what you think, like, about the round and about these things. Let's talk through the round and see what are your thoughts on how I could do something. That conversation changed our relationship completely, because I thought I needed to do these 15 things. So I would encourage parents to have that. If you don't do anything else as a result of this podcast, go have that conversation with your kids and say, how can I support you? What do you need from me before, during, and after? The third and this is probably the toughest, is to let it happen. We say that, adversity is this amazing teacher if we'll get out of the way. and let it happen. And there's a couple of stories that get shared in there, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of one that's extremely powerful. Is about this guy who found a cocoon. Right, everybody knows cocoons, and they turn into butterflies at the end. So this guy found this cocoon, and he saw this thing struggling inside of it. Right, this caterpillar struggling inside of the cocoon, and so he's like, well, I don't want to see the guy struggle. So he went and he picked the cocoon open, right, to make it easier for this caterpillar to come out. And he said, hey, I've done this great thing. Well, what happened is when the caterpillar came out, the wings were poorly formed. The butterfly never formed, and the butterfly was never able to fly. So the whole moral of the story is that we need that struggle, we need that fight inside of that cocoon to help us develop. And I think a lot of times if we're trying to again knock down barriers, knock down knock down obstacles for our kids, we risk kind of stunting their wings. So that's another piece of guidance again coming from this guy who got it wrong is as hard as it is, let them fail. I just saw last night. So I live in Greenville, South Carolina. We had a baby giraffe born at the zoo. And so, of course, they put it on the news, right? Anything that gets born, they put on the news. There's a mama giraffe and the little giraffes struggling to walk, falling up against the wall, and his legs are buckling and doing all these different things. And I had that same thought about the butterfly in the cocoon. I'm like, that mama giraffe is not running over, sticking her neck up, holding the giraffe up. She's just letting the giraffe learn how to walk. And that's what has to happen is that, the giraffe has to get strengthened. So expectations, again, going back to, what do the kids expect from you? Let it be their journey. Let them know that you love watching them play no matter what they do.
Wow.
And I would hammer this home is that let them know that their value is not defined by their performance. Again, I've been guilty of that, just not deliberately, but my actions, after a game or after whatever, where I've acted different, where I've seemed different. And I see that across, you can see dads trying to walk off fairways. You can see people get in the car and don't say anything. You see people go to Cracker Barrel and don't say anything. I was that guy.
Or seeing people
So
walk to the dugout fussing the whole way.
yeah, or walk out of a gymnasium, right? If somebody turns the ball over, the kids turn it. So again, there's I probably ramble there, but I speak on adversity a lot, and that's important. But let it be their journey. Don't ever let them think that their value, your kids' value, because it's not. Sport could go away tomorrow, right? Renee Lopez, who is another friend of Tammy, and she's written an awesome book about looking for a full ride, about how kids get into college and college scholarships and such. And she's very adamant about when you go visit a school to implement the broken leg rule. Would you be happy going to school here if you broke your leg and you were never able to play your sport again? Like
Wow.
that's how you pick. That's how you pick where you. That's how you pick the experience, right? Pick the experience. Don't pick it for the sport kind of thing. So stuff like that. And so you go back to the whole shameless plug thing, right? Like you could knock out the whole first half of the book where we ramble about stuff, but the back half where these people are giving their advice, it is absolutely priceless stuff. And I wish for those that know who Marty McFly are in the DeLorean,
Mm-hmm.
I wish somebody could go back in time and hand me what we wrote. And it's not that it's not this great, but it's just somebody wrote it down, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking here, and I didn't know what. I had two questions that I want to follow up on. I didn't know which one I wanted to jump with first because the one that I need is now that the kids are past their high school and college experience,
Mm-hmm.
how do I atone for being that dad?
Yeah.
Because there was times that I was very supportive, I was encouraging there, but I can still see that there were times that I probably inhibited their ability to enjoy it. Not maybe their ability to be what they could be athletically,
Yeah.
but their ability to enjoy it. So that was the first question I had, and the second one was related to what you said about your book, is that you also had advice for the young athletes. So
Yeah. Yeah.
which one of those do you want to dive into first?
Yeah. So I'll go with the first one. I think it's never too late to say I'm sorry, right? Never too late to say I'm sorry. It could be 30 years and you can text somebody or call somebody and say, hey man, I'm sorry for something. But I think what it does is it shows, again, sports. If you take a step back from it, like if you get down in the weeds, it's hard to see anything else, forest for the trees kind of thing. But if you take a step back and get away from it, you recognize what an awesome teacher it is for life. You recognize the fact that sometimes a ball tips and goes out of bounds, or sometimes you throw a strike dead down the middle and the umpire calls it a ball, right? That's life. Nothing you can do about it. So I think it's important for kids to recognize that, hey, as you go through and having these experiences, whether you're swimming or whether you're playing soccer or whatever, like life's unfair. Like sometimes you do everything right and everything goes wrong. And sometimes
Hmm.
vice versa. You see this guy over here who's doing everything wrong and everything goes right for him, kind of thing. So I say that to say, I think having a conversation even now as kids are in college age or whatever, is just to go back and have that honest conversation and say, hey, I got it wrong, maybe more times than I got it right as a parent. But what I want you to know is I love you, right? And I don't want you, if you ever felt like, your value or your worth was based on kind of my reactions and actions, like I am so sorry for that. Because I think that's important because in theory, what's going to happen is our kids are going to have kids, right? And they're going to raise their little suckers as well. So I think it's important for us to show, particularly as dads, the fact that, hey, like we make mistakes and we're not perfect, and we get it wrong, but the manly thing to do is to go have that conversation, right? And never miss that opportunity. So that's what I would say is just it's a great opportunity to have a conversation where, like, a real conversation with our kids, because the way I view things, and again, I've read books on this as well, is that, like, decisions, this is powerful. The decisions that you and I make today, um, like whether it's we're saying, hey, I'm not going to drink anymore, I'm not going to smoke anymore, I'm not going to do XYZ anymore, I'm going to start doing this. Like, it doesn't just affect my son. Like, I have the capability, and you do as well, and all the listeners do as well. You got the power to affect your entire family tree, right? Decisions you make today can have an impact hundreds of years down the line, right?
Yeah.
Because you made that one decision. So think about how powerful that is if you have that conversation with your child and they in turn have that with their child, or you establish a set of morals, right? Or you establish a thing you want to do. So that's pretty cool when you think about the fact that the decisions and the conversations and how you do things you do today, you can affect an entire family tree, right? So that's pretty powerful. So that was number one, is to have those conversations. And if my memory serves me correct, your second was about the advice in the book for the athletes themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Um, so I think on the whole, the themes that you'll see emerge there are, again, whether this is from a professional athlete, whether it's from, again, the gentleman in the book that's a Heisman finalist from UGA, whether it's a high school coach, whether it's Dabo Swinney, whether it's professional athletes, is to enjoy the journey. Like,
Mhm.
don't miss it, right? As an athlete, do not miss it, because as you and I can attest to, like, it goes away. Like, I can't go back and play basketball, right, with the buddies I had. I can't go back and compete in those games, kind of thing. One is because I'm 50, and they don't make enough Aspercream or whatever it is, whatever the best thing to do today is. But it does go away. So enjoy the journey. Secondly, a big piece of advice there is encouragement for the athletes to thank their parents, um, for all the sacrifices. Because as an athlete, I never recognized this when I was younger, but, like, parents, we're the Uber drivers, we're the snack bringer getters, we're the rain gear bringer getters, we're the ones that finance if you're giving somebody lessons or training or so on and so forth. And there's several people who have really pointed advice for, like, hey, don't take that for granted. Thank your parents, thank your support group, right? Your siblings, thank your grandparents for coming, that sort of thing. So um, the other is that stands out to me is be a good teammate. And again, this is the one that goes to life as well, because nobody wants to play with a jerk, and nobody wants to work with a jerk. And again, everybody listening right now, if I said, hey, write down 5 good guys and write down 5 jerks, like, they could burn the paper up, because they could write down, like, here's the jerks. That all translates to life as well. So be a good teammate, and take advantage and recognize. those things that are being asked of you, that are going to be asked of you in real life. So show up, ready to work, show up on time, be committed, be committed to what you're doing, be committed to, to making yourself, 1% better, every day. So just it's some 101 stuff really, but if you kind of gets all muddled up in the process, but if you really kind of go back and focus on it, it's good reminders of things, things to the athlete. So, don't miss the forest for the trees.
Mark, how can our audience connect with you or find this book? What's the best way?
Yeah, so a couple things. If you go to if you drive over to Amazon and go search the Drive Home McKinney, you can order the book directly off of Amazon. On Facebook, we've got a Facebook group which is growing, and it's similar name. It's the same name as the book. It's the Drive Home. The youth, it's the parent youth athlete experience, and is probably the best way there. And you can join the discussion groups and share resources. And I think the most powerful thing is in that Facebook group is we've connected out to things like you guys, things like Tammy, things like Renee that I mentioned. So it's like this. I won't say weird village, but it's this powerful village of all these different resources that come together. And then you can always get us by email, Britt and Mark, the drive home at gmail.com. So BRITTANDMARK, the drive home at Gmail. And so you can go grab the book off Amazon and get it shipped to you. But if there's anybody that's we've had several teams, several large groups that said, hey, we want to get some stuff in bulk. We want to order books for the whole team. So just reach out to me at that email address or Facebook group and say, and I'm on Facebook as well, of course, but just we'll arrange for just discounted pricing and things like that. And I should say too that a portion of every book we sell goes to an organization called Youth on Course, the YOC. And what that does is it provides, particularly in the golf world, so that kids that may not be able to afford to go play whatever golf courses, they can go play all these courses for $5, just
Wow.
through the donations that come through Youth on Course. So as we sell books, we roll a portion of the dollars back to that group. So, and it's not for us. And again, as sort of an upfront aside, is like, this book is not going to make your child like score more points on a basketball court or throw more strikes, or that's not what it's about. Like, it's not about making that kid a better athlete. What it's about is making us better parents. Helping us, holding that mirror up to ourselves, saying, hey, how can I be a better, more supportive sports parent? And if you're interested in that, if you've ever had those moments, if you see yourself on kind of the crazy end of that spectrum of that sports parent, without a doubt, grab it and read it, and would love to hear the feedback.
Wow. Listen, all of that information we're going to put in the show notes. So if you're listening, just
Okay,
go to
good.
your app and you'll find the links there. And if you're watching or listening through YouTube, because that's very popular now, just click down and you can see right below us in the show notes all those different links. Art, thank you for this. You've challenged me to do some things today to go through these things and give me a lot of going forward on this. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, James, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And thank you, audience, for sticking with us. Listen, if I say this every week, but I really want to say it with a emphatic way of saying it today. Someone that needs to hear this show, needs to share know this information. So please like, share, and comment on this podcast. And we'll see you again next week on the Gen Z Show.